You've probably heard that email has the highest ROI out of any marketing channel, or email has a 40-to-1 ROI, or any of these big, bold stats about email marketing. Now, I don't doubt that some businesses get incredible ROI from their email marketing. I've absolutely seen it firsthand, but not every business does. And by default, you can't expect that your email marketing is getting you that high of an ROI. So how do you know what ROI is your email marketing giving you? Let me show you how to find out. I'm Allie, I'm a data-backed marketing strategist, and in this video, I'm gonna break down exactly how to track the performance of your email marketing. I'm gonna talk through what you can and can't trust in the stats that your email platform gives you. And I'm going to show you how to use UTMs so that inside of your website analytics or your Google Analytics, you can see which emails, which sequences are the ones that are actually driving traffic to sales pages or product pages, and which ones are the ones that are converting. If you implement the tracking that I talk through today, you're going to have a super clear picture of whether your email marketing is bringing you a 40-to-1 ROI or whether it's not bringing you any sales at all. So let's figure out exactly where you land. And as always, if you want more data-backed marketing tips and resources, make sure that you hit subscribe so you get notified when my next video launches. So let's first talk through what your email marketing platform gives you and why it sometimes can't be trusted, and to why it's not enough to get the full picture of your performance. So when you look at the data in your email service provider, your Flowdesk, your Kit, your MailChimp, whatever, primary stats that you're likely looking at are open rates, click rates, and unsubscribe rates. The big thing to be aware of is these aren't always accurate because of how inboxes will screen the emails coming through. Some email inboxes are actually going to open all of those emails and click every link in those emails before the person who you sent that to has even opened their inbox for the day. That's because they're screening for spam or any other things that they want to then be able to flag those emails for. And that can show up in your data tracking as this person opened and clicked when in reality they actually did none of those things. Does that mean that you should never look at your open rates and click rates? No, absolutely not. We want to look at that data, but it does mean that your open rates and click rates are not comparable to someone else's. You can still look at your open rates and click rates and compare them to each other, because we would assume that if you're emailing the same people, yeah, there's a little bit of churn and cycling through, but you're emailing the same-ish audience every single time. And so their inboxes are going to react the same to it every time. So if one email has an open rate of 60% and the other has an open rate of 30%, 60% is the clear winner. Great. But you can't look at your open rates and compare them to another business's, because their audience is going to be totally different. And especially if they work with a lot of nonprofits or government agencies, or emails that you know are going to have a higher security screening protocol, their open rates are going to look higher because of those systems in their inboxes. The same goes for click rates, and the tracking of them in your ESP, depending on your audience and depending on your systems, sometimes are reliable and sometimes not. So the extra layer that we can put on our email is we can start using UTMs in our emails, which are little tracking snippets that get put at the end of your links that you include in your emails. They're super quick and easy to create and add. And then you'll be able to see in your Google Analytics, this many sessions came from this specific email. And that should, in theory, line up with the number of clicks that came from that email as well. So you're essentially tracking the number of clicks in two different places. So if the click rate is being inflated or isn't tracking everything in your ESP, you at least have the data tracking accurately in your Google Analytics or your website analytics platform. Now, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that in just 2 seconds. But first, I want to show you how this data shows up in your tracking, so that you can visualize how you could use this to make more strategic data-backed decisions about your email marketing. So when you start using UTMs in your emails, that data will show up in your Google Analytics. Now, if you've watched my videos before, you know that I hate using Google Analytics' native reporting systems because they suck. So I use dashboards like this Data Studio dashboard here to analyze results, but this is connected directly into my Google Analytics data automatically. So this is Google Analytics data. It just looks a lot cleaner and nicer. I will show you how to get this in Google Analytics because I know not all of my viewers also have dashboards, but let me show you first in this simple and straightforward way how we look at this data, because then it'll be easier for you to understand where we're getting at in the back end of Google Analytics that is unfortunately not as straightforward as this. So in this dashboard, this looks at my Google Analytics data and specifically how people got to my website. Did they come from paid social or from email or from organic video, which is YouTube, etc. And why I love using a dashboard like this versus Google Analytics is because it's so much easier for me to filter my data down in just a couple clicks instead of having to go through a whole rigmarole so that I can get to the questions that I want. So what I want to really see is how much traffic is coming from email and is that changing month over month? I can kind of figure it out on this chart by the color here, but I can also just filter this down to email. And then it's going to show me month over month how much email traffic came in. Then the other thing that I can do on here, because I've been using UTMs that are going to tell me exactly which sequence these emails are coming from, or if it's a newsletter, it's also going to be able to tell me which specific email sent this traffic through. I can change the way that this table populates my data and ask it to tell me which specific email brought in the most clicks or the most conversions. I could look at this over a specific period of time, over a launch. I could look at a specific sequence and start to see which are the high performing emails, then go back into those emails and say, okay, what worked really well about this? How can I apply that to other emails? Or maybe I'm looking at last year's Black Friday emails and I want to pull all of the top performers and then just rewrite the ones that didn't do as well last year. This is the exact way that I would figure out which ones are the high performers, which ones are actually driving conversions, whether that's leads, purchases, whatever. So you can see that in a dashboard like this, it just took me 3 or 4 clicks and I was able to go down to this. I will show you how to get this in Google Analytics. It's a little bit more complicated, but totally doable. But if you want dashboards like this is a dashboard that I include in my Data-Backed Entrepreneur program. I teach you how to set it up. It also makes sure that you have your Google Analytics set up to track your conversions like you need here so that we can pull this all together. If you want more info on Data-Backed Entrepreneur, the link is in the description below. But let me show you in Google Analytics where you can get this data. So if you go into your Google Analytics and you go into traffic acquisition, you'll be able to see here how much traffic came from email. And then if you have your conversions set up, you can kind of go over here to the event count column and you can filter down to whichever event you wanted to look at. So maybe you want the purchase event and it's going to tell you, okay, from email during that time period, you had 0 purchases. Or maybe you want to look at a different event of, okay, but how many people started a checkout process? Okay, great, it's got your number there. Where Google Analytics makes our life a little bit more of a nightmare is like in my dashboard, I was able to then change this chart to show different rows by the different UTM terms so that I could see how many conversions or clicks came from each specific email. And although we can change this table to show us different things for the rows, it only populates 3 of the 5 UTM parameters. And the one that I recommend you put the email in is not one of the ones that it allows here. And that does not mean that you want to go and start putting the email name in a different one. There are very specific roles that each of these parameters play, and we want to use them for something else. So if you want to be able to go down to the level of detail that my dashboard gave you, you need to go into Explore and you need to create a new custom report. Now, this is going into a little bit of a rabbit hole of how to build this out, but I'm just going to really quickly populate one for you here so that you can see what it would look like. Okay, so if you are familiar with Google Analytics custom reports, you can pretty much copy these settings here, but essentially I've been able to recreate the same thing that I had in my dashboard where we've got the UTM parameter, the content parameter that should have the email in them. And then I've pulled through the number of sessions, which should be close to the number of clicks from each email, and then the number of purchases from each email. But as you can see, it's definitely not as visual and it's not as flexible. So I definitely recommend if this is data that you're looking into, you want dashboards like this so that you can analyze your data easily, because the harder it is to do, the more you're going to put it off and you're not going to look at it. And then you're going to continue just throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping that what you're doing is working versus actually making those strategic data-backed decisions. So, okay, you're like, great, Allie, I would love to have data like this. What do I need to do to make that happen? So you need two things so that your Google Analytics will have the data so that you can pull it into a dashboard. So even if you're not going to go about and start using dashboards or looking at this data today, you want to start setting up these two data tracking systems today so that in 6 months or in your next launch, when you want to look at the data, it's actually tracking. Because this data tracking will only start working after you set it up. So you need to set it up today if you want to look at this data in 3 months or 6 months. The two things that you need to set up is one, you need to be using UTMs in every single email so that Google Analytics knows exactly which email each click came from. And two, you need to have your Google Analytics configured so that there are conversions tracking, and those conversions need to be tracking accurately. Let's quickly cover each of these. So when it comes to UTMs, UTMs are little tracking snippets that you put at the end of your links. There is a video that I've linked below of UTMs for beginners. If you're like, I have no idea what that is, give me more info, watch that video that I've linked below, and that will give you the full run through. But what you need to be doing is anytime that you add a link in that email, you need to create a UTM for it and add it. There's two ways you can do that. The first one is you can use Google's UTM builder. It has a whole bunch of fields here. You populate the things into the fields and it'll give you your UTM. The pros of using this is Google Analytics' tool here is free to use. You can use it as many times as you want. It's great. The downside of it is you need to know what to put in each of these boxes. And for an effective UTM strategy, you need to make sure that you're consistently tagging your links. And if every time you come in here and you do it differently because you don't know what goes in each of these boxes, that's going to make your UTM strategy essentially useless and not work. To help with this, I have a UTM cheat sheet that you can download below where I've given you the exact breakdown of how to use UTMs for emails. So essentially every single time you would open up this cheat sheet, you would open up your UTM URL builder, and you would create your UTM that way. It'll just take you a couple of minutes and you will know that you're tracking all of your emails effectively. The other way that you can do this, which I would argue is the better way, is I have a product called UTMs Made Simple. It is a UTM builder that has the strategy built in, so you don't need to know what goes in each of the boxes. You would just click to create a new UTM. It's going to ask you a couple questions about what you're doing. Is this a newsletter or a sequence? This is a newsletter, which I call my newsletter the data drop, so that's why that's there. And then it'll ask you, is this just weekly content or is this part of a launch? Which date is this email going to go out? Let's say it's going out today. And so I've just answered those 3 questions in a couple seconds. I didn't need to think strategically about what a UTM is or anything. And when I scroll down, it's already created and prepped my UTM here. And then it's built my link for me that I can just copy and paste over. UTMs Made Simple also comes with training videos that go into what UTMs are, how to use them, some of the strategic nuances and more fancy things that you can do with them if you want to dive even a little bit deeper. But this is the best way for you to make UTMs for your business. And it doesn't just cover email. I also cover social media, YouTube, paid social, podcast collabs, PDFs and course portals, all of the different places that you probably should be using UTMs are all covered in here. If you want to check out UTMs Made Simple, the link for it is below. So whichever UTM method you choose to use, just start using UTMs in your emails. And a question that I often get is some email systems have a toggle that you can turn on to automatically track UTMs. Some of them do a good job, but many of them don't structure their UTMs in the most ideal way. They'll put the email name in the campaign term instead of the content term, which is, I guess, better than nothing, but it's not going to be a strategic, robust UTM strategy that I would recommend for any of my students or my clients. So if that's the best that you can do right now, cool, turn it on and go for it, but don't expect that you're going to get the same level of data clarity that I've shown you today. And then, of course, if you want to fully track your email marketing performance, those UTMs will tell Google Analytics that that traffic came from an email. But if you want to be able to connect that to, did this person convert into a lead, into an inquiry, into a purchase, you also need to have conversion tracking set up in your Google Analytics. So if you go into your Google Analytics and into reports and into engagement and events. This will tell you exactly which events your Google Analytics is currently tracking. You might need to change your rows per page to a higher number if there's more than 10 in here. And I would look at if it's purchases that you want to track. One, does purchases exist here? And then how many purchases is it recording during this time period? And does that actually line up with the real numbers? If either your conversions are not showing up here, that means that they're not tracking and you need to set them up. Or if the numbers are vastly different from what reality is, that means that something is not set up correctly. If your Google Analytics is not set up correctly, you should check out my program Tracking Sorted, which walks you through step-by-step how to set up Google Analytics accurately via Google Tag Manager. So it's a pro-level setup, the same or better than any agency is going to give you, but you can DIY it because I've got plug-and-play templates and step-by-step walkthroughs built for beginners that are not familiar with these tools at all. So those are the things that you need to do if you want to track if your email marketing performance is actually bringing you in results. And when you have this, you can look at emails for a sequence or emails for a launch. In seconds, identify these are the ones that are performing well, I'm going to keep them, and these are the ones that I'm going to refine so that I can get more sales without having to recreate everything from scratch, or maybe I changed something that was actually working well just because you didn't vibe with it anymore. We want to make our decisions of what we're tweaking, what we're changing, what we're pivoting based on data, not vibes or what our gut is telling us. As always, all the links to everything that I've talked about today is included in the description below. Now get out there and start tracking your emails.